Our first myth is that Hitler got spared by a British soldier, which is still quite prevalent to this day. The story goes that Henry Tandy, a private in the British Army, ran into a wounded Adolf Hitler at the French village of Marcoing on September 28, 1918. But upon seeing that Hitler was wounded, he spared him and let him return to the German line, and ever since then, people believe he has 17 million kill assists. The myth originated from Hitler and Nazi propaganda spreading the story, most notably when Neville Chamberlain visited Hitler, with Hitler pointing at a painting of Henry Tandy carrying a wounded man during the Battle of Ypres in 1914, saying, quote, "That man came so close to killing me that I thought I shouldn't see Germany again." Now, why would a random soldier have a painting of him, you might ask? Well, Henry Tandy was one of the most decorated privates of the First World War and was generally considered a war hero, with Hitler acquiring the painting of his alleged savior in 1937. But Hitler's story falls apart due to the fact that Hitler's unit had been moved to the Belgian town of Wervik, 50 miles north of Marcoing, and Tandy's unit. Bavarian records also show that Hitler was on leave in Germany from September 25th to the 27th, meaning he was likely still returning to the front, or even still in Germany during the supposed time of their encounter. Lastly, Hitler was wounded and blinded near Ypres during a gas attack on October 14th, 16 days later, further showing how Hitler was nowhere near Marcoing, and also showing how he's probably not wounded in September due to the fact that he was still at the front. Also, there's like no record of him being wounded in September besides the myth. When questioned about saving Hitler, Henry Tandy did say he spared several soldiers, including on the 28th, but also claimed they needed more information before he could confirm or deny it, and he obviously regretted sparing Hitler if he actually did, for obvious reasons. The myth was likely spread to make it seem like Hitler was divinely safe to carry out his mission to save Germany, but more likely Hitler just heard about Tandy and were like, yes, this guy definitely saved me for shits and giggles, and then proceeded to run Germany into the ground. Our second myth is that Galileo was persecuted for saying that the earth is round. Galileo Galilei was an Italian physicist, astronomer, and engineer, so basically if you took the main characters of the Big Bang Theory and stuck them into a blender with ragu. And a large misconception about him is that he was persecuted by the Catholic Church for saying that the earth is round. The only problem with this is that people in Europe had already known the earth was round ever since 500 BC, with the Greeks finding out by doing a bunch of math and looking at horizons and stuff, meaning that this was already commonly accepted knowledge by the time Galileo came around, and a lot of his research and ideas were actually accepted by the church and taught at Catholic universities. What really got him in trouble was his heliocentric theory, which was the idea that the sun, instead of the earth, was in the center of our solar system, with him adapting Copernicus' theory about it. The Copernican structure of the solar system was made by Copernicus, another big science guy. It was basically how the universe really works if it got dropped on his head as a child due to these things called epicycles, which made the planets do this when in orbit around the sun, needlessly complicating the model. But due to the Bible implying that the earth was fixed in one spot, and that the idea of God's greatest creation, us, being in the center of literally everything kind of sounds pretty sweet, not gonna lie, it was widely accepted that we were in the center of the universe, with everything revolving around us. So due to the church being mad butthurt about that, and due to the fact that Galileo insulted the Pope in his latest book, during the Roman Exquisition, Galileo was charged with heresy and spent the rest of his life under house arrest. Which, I mean, like, considering all the other things done to people for heresy, it doesn't sound like too bad of a punishment, Our third myth is that samurai didn't really like to use guns. Now, I'm mainly including this myth because weeaboos would look a lot cooler if they had Glock 19s. Now, guns were first introduced to Japan by Portuguese traders in 1543, and actually ended up quickly becoming a key component of samurai weaponry due to having many advantages over the bow, like range and armor-piercing abilities. They became so important, in fact, that daimyo Tadeki Shingen, I probably just butchered that, just straight up declared them the most important weapon ever in 1567. And the Japanese ended up loving guns so much that they possibly produced more guns than most European countries did, with 160,000 gunners partaking in the 1592 invasion of Korea. But during the rule of the Tokugawa shogunate, a time of peace and isolation, the samurai moved to using guns for hunting and target practice, which then changed again, however, when Commodore Matthew Perry showed up, causing many samurai to seek out and acquire more modern rifles, like the Mine rifle, until the samurai era ended in 1868 with the Meiji Restoration. So yeah, the samurai really loved their guns. Our fourth myth is that Caesar's last words were et tu, Brute. As I'm sure many of you know, all of Caesar's best friends in the Senate got together one day and decided to stab him stoned to death. And according to the myth, when they were in the process of doing so, Caesar saw Marcus Brutus among the senders. And for context, Brutus was like a son to Caesar, which resulted in Caesar's final words being "et tu, Brute," which means "and you, Brutus" in English. Yeah, so this was entirely made up by Shakespeare when he was writing the play about Caesar, but the line became so iconic that it just kinda warped into the truth for many people. Also, the words "et tu, Brute" aren't even Caesar's last words in the play, because right after that he says, "Then fall Caesar," making the myth double sad. But what Caesar actually said and did right before dying is greatly up to debate, with ancient historians providing many different accounts. Suetonius claims that Caesar said, quote, "What is this violence?" or "Ista quidem vis est," as the attack started. Plutarch claimed that Caesar said, "Faulus Cassa, what are you doing?" as his last words, with him pulling his toga over his head as he lay dying instead of saying something, a little more dramatic. And Cassius Dio claims that Caesar did not and could not say anything on account of being turned into a human pincushion. But this account is actually greatly debatable because of the 23 stab wounds he received. Only one was fatal and the rest were superficial. But Cassius Dio and Suetonius also both reported that according to others, Caesar had also said the Greek phrase, that, meaning, "You too, my child," upon seeing Brutus. But the meaning of this is also debated, as it could mean something similar to the meaning of that in the play, or it could mean that Brutus would die in a similar way, which is ironic because Brutus reportedly killed himself by stabbing himself with his own sword after losing a bout to Augustus and Mark Antony, making Caesar right. Our fifth myth is another fake quote, that being, quote, "There's a sucker born every minute" by P.T. Barnum, the greatest showman himself, who, in fact, I did just make a video about, but there's just simply no actual evidence of him saying the quote, with the quote being more attributed to other con artists like Joseph Papercolor Joe Bessemer and David Honham. The quote was likely attached to Barnum by rival carny Adam Forepaugh, who was likely trying to discredit Barnum in a newspaper interview. But really, the phrase is just associated with gamblers and conmen in general, because, of course it is, so it kind of makes sense how the myth came to be, but it just simply isn't true. Our last myth is that Gregory Rasputin has survived being poisoned by cyanide and getting shot a bunch of times, which is another prevalent myth. Due to Rasputin having a large and questionable effect on the Russian royal family during World War I, a group of Russian nobles invited Rasputin to a party to kill him. According to the myth, Rasputin was offered cakes and wine laced with cyanide, but after eating a boatload of them, he seemed unaffected by the poison. So the conspirators then decided just to straight up shoot Rasputin, and Rasputin fell to the floor. But then he leapt up and attacked them, causing them to flee into the courtyard. It was like some real Scooby-Doo shit, where they then shot him again, causing him to collapse into the snow. Then, to ensure he was actually dead, the conspirators threw his body into the Little Nevka River. But this was the version of events according to Prince Yusupov, one of the nobles who murdered Rasputin. But this likely wasn't true and is a greatly exaggerated account. Rasputin was widely known for abstaining from sweets and likely wouldn't have eaten any of the poison cakes. And the autopsy of Rasputin revealed no poisoning or drowning, but cause of death of a shot to the head at close range. So Rasputin's death likely more went like this. Hey, so who's ready to party? So if you enjoyed the video and want to see more like it, click this video right here. It's just for you. And if you really like this channel, click here to subscribe.